This video is about the repair of the Home Depot cheapo red plastic latch on the toolboxes. It's a great toolbox as far as, in an economical sense, but that red plastic latch, they have a tendency to break, the ones on the side anyways, because there's a lot of weight. You have all these tools on the top, and it's organized great. I mean, for the price, and considering it's a lifetime warranty on the tools, it's really not a bad deal. And the latch, though, when you take that latch off, you're going to see there's a lot of weight down below. You got all your deep sockets here, and underneath the deep sockets there's more sockets, and so quite a bit of weight. But the latch itself just wants to break. Now the latches on this toolbox actually come off fairly easy. I try using the screwdriver here, and I had a harder time getting it out with the screwdriver. I actually ended up just squeezing the plastic together, squeezing the latch there in the middle to get it to pry out. But now this one doesn't need to be fixed. I'll show you the one I am going to fix here in a little bit. I actually have two of them that need to be fixed. These, on this particular toolbox, I will at a later time take the latches out and rough the plastic up next to the plastic pivot, the dimple there that goes into the black part of the toolbox, and after roughing it out about right here, fill this all up with epoxy, even up around here. Now, this might be kind of confusing because I was showing the one that's not broken. Now I'm showing you that one that is broken. But again, I'm going to rough it out here with the steel wheel on a drill motor, or with sandpaper. The best way I can do it, rough it up, and then fill it all in with epoxy. But I have to weld the plastic piece back on here to the dimple on it. Let me show you it in brighter light. Well, here's a close-up of the Home Depot cheapo red plastic tool latch. And don't get me wrong, I like the tools, and I even like the toolbox the way it's arranged. I just don't like these little latches that they put on there. This is kind of new within the last 2 or 3 years. These things, they break right here. The little nub there breaks off, and that's when that breaks off, then you can't keep your toolbox together. I have the double stack box that I showed you. And there's a good close-up of the break. What I'm going to do next is use this soldering iron to spot weld the plastic piece that broke off back onto the red latch. And I prefer to use a smaller handheld unit, but this is they sell little soldering irons that they use as, they call them plastic welders, but they've always been soldering irons. But anyway, so I'm going to use this to just lightly kind of spot weld the little piece of plastic back onto the red plastic latch. Now, I lined the plastic up perfectly to the break, and I spot welded it, and then I pulled it out a little bit so you can see that it is tacked, but it's not totally welded on yet. In fact, I don't intend to rely on a plastic weld for this. What I'm going to do is, after I weld this back on, more or less just kind of melt the plastic and just kind of get it back on, I'm going to fill in some of these areas here with a resin as a support, so that hopefully it doesn't break in the future. But I'm going to have to check again the measurements on the box. I want to make sure that I don't want to put too much resin in there. Next, we'll need to be able to sand off all the rough edges, and then also on the inside in here, rough this up so the epoxy will stick. I want to put a nice coating of epoxy in here and take off all the rough edges of the plastic. I'm going to use a wire brush on a DeWalt drill, and that'll rough it up even more. Now that did a really good job of roughing that up. Now it looks like I took maybe too much off, but really I didn't. And think about that. That's how well the plastic weld held up. I mean, I took that down quite a bit, but there's a lot of room for the epoxy to fill in that corner and give this little post the support it's going to need to take a beating. Now I'm going to do the same with the other side too. Even though it hasn't broke, I'm going to rough that up, and then we're going to epoxy that over there too, and that'll just make that latch all the more tougher. Now I did the other side. It's all roughed up too. And the grinding with the steel wheel did really good, but I'm going to take a rough piece of metal and I'm going to kind of scratch up in the corners. Anywhere it's glossy and shiny, you want to get rid of that, because you want the epoxy to stick to the plastic, and if it's too smooth and shiny, it won't stick. Actually, what I'll be using is J&B Weld, and I don't know if technically if it's an epoxy, but it's going to work. And when I said rough up the smooth surfaces on the plastic that the epoxy won't stick, people will be people will argue about whether it will or not, but I have seen even J&B Weld break away from a plastic where, say, like it's really smooth right where my thumb is, as opposed to an area that's been roughed up. So with the J&B Weld, if you're not familiar with it, it'll come in 2 tubes, and you take equal amounts and you dab it on cardboard or something that you don't mind throwing it away, because you don't want to put this stuff on a plate. You won't be able to wash it off the plate, so use cardboard or something that you can throw away. And anyways, equal amounts of the black and a dab, equal amounts of the red and a dab, and mix it all up with a toothpick or matchstick or whatever you have available to mix it. Now that I have 2 equal amounts of the from the tubes on the cardboard, I'm going to mix them up. And it might actually even be easier if you have the blobs closer together. It mixes up a little better. Now I'm mixing it up. I want to mix it till it's all one even beautiful color. Dull gray. And now that I have it all mixed, I am going to actually use a plastic spoon to spread it. And here's the finished product. You can see how I filled in, beefed it up around the backside. I filled it in pretty deep. There's plenty of room for that much of whatever you want to use, whatever kind of epoxy you think is going to work the best. J&B Weld works really well. And so the tabs themselves will probably break, and if anybody out there does see this and can come up with a I was kind of thinking about maybe even like using wire, making something out of wire that like spring wire or something like that, that would just where you'd have bend it so that you have the tabs that go into the drawer, and then have a snap clip on one end, just something that would work that way. as a total replacement for a plastic latch. That'd be really cool if somebody come up with something like that. Oh, I got a little bit of, I set it down on top of the spoon here, and so I got to wipe off some of that. But this will last longer than it would if I hadn't put the gussets, I guess you could call it, when you're welding or doing other things. If you put steel bracing or build something up like that, I believe it's called a gusset. So anyways, yeah, not a snap-on toolbox, but it's a toolbox nevertheless. Toolbox latch. Anyways, up there, I just put more in there. Sweet. They're all shined up again like new. Anyways, that's it for this project. Oh, something I wanted to add too before going is that sometimes if the epoxy that you're using, if it's going to run, you think it's not going to stay in place. I wanted it to be built up in the corner over here. Over here it looks fine. This is actually the side where it broke, where it's broken. And so while it's kind of thick on the epoxy right there, it's thin on this side, there is a simple solution to the problem. The solution is to, when you put the epoxy in, just to brace it in with like a paper towel or some kind of fabric that is strong, like maybe the Santa wipes that have kind of a, I don't know if it's a stronger fiber, and then after it's done you can trim the paper out the side. But see how that kept the epoxy in place really good, and it's nice and rounded and built up against the posts here, the hinge posts where it's going to be most sensitive. So that worked out really well. And you're not going to see the paper on the back side, so it's not going to matter that much. So it's one way to do that without having the epoxy run down the side, run away from where you want to keep it, to build something up to keep it, give it strength.